Hello everyone. So it's a proud moment for India as India has become the fourth largest economy of the world, right? So in a recently held meeting or press briefing by Niti Aayog CEO, he has said as per IMF data, India now has surpassed Japan and has become the fourth biggest economy of the world. As you can see it here, by the end of 2025, these are the projection of GDP of various countries or top 5 countries. USA will remain at first position with a GDP of nearly $30 trillion. China with a GDP of nearly $19.5 trillion. Germany with a GDP of nearly $4.9 trillion, and India is at 4th place and will remain at 4th place by the end of this year with a GDP of $4.39 trillion. India has recently surpassed Japan, right? And it is expected that in next 2.5 to 3 years, India will surpass Germany as well. Reason being the growth rate, the GDP growth rate of India is roughly at 6.5% per annum. On the other hand, if you see the growth rate of Germany, it is less than a percent, less than 1%, right? And hence India in next 2.5 to 3 years will surpass Germany as well. So what we are comparing here is GDP. I hope you all understand GDP. GDP is gross domestic product, which means that the total value of all the goods and services produced in our country within one financial year, within 1 year, is called as GDP. So right now India's GDP is slightly more than $4 trillion. That is the news. But what does it mean for India to become the fourth biggest economy? Does it mean that the standard of living in India will become one of the best in the world? Will India be considered as a developed country now? So let's try to find out the answers to these questions. So you see, India, it might have become the fourth biggest economy of the world, but as we all know, India is still considered as a developing country only, not a developed country only. Because to become a developed country, more than the overall GDP, the factor which is considered is per capita GDP, right? Per capita GDP or per capita income. What is per capita income? If you divide total GDP by total population, you get per capita income, right? If you want to see the richest countries of the world in terms of per capita, these are not the countries which are biggest in terms of overall GDP. So we have seen that USA has the most, the biggest GDPs of USA, then China, then Germany is at 3rd place, India at 4th place, Japan is at 5th place. None of these have the highest GDP in terms of per capita. So Luxembourg, a country in Europe, has the highest per capita income. Second is Ireland, then third is Switzerland. Singapore is at 4th place. Iceland is at 5th place. You will be finding USA, which has highest GDP in terms of per capita, they are at 7th place, right? China, which has second highest GDP in terms of per capita, it is at 69th place, right? India, which has 4th largest GDP in terms of per capita income, we are at 144th place in the world, which makes India a developing country, which means even now, even though we have become the 4th largest economy of the world in terms of nominal GDP, because in terms of per capita GDP, our income is very less, we are still, or we have a lot to go, right? So that is one thing. Another concept here to understand is that in terms of nominal GDP, we have reached at the 4th place. But if you all know, in terms of purchasing power parity GDP, India since 2009 itself, we are at 3rd place. So let's try to understand what is purchasing power parity. So let's say there is a person A and there is another person B. Let's say the salary of person A is 1 lakh rupees per month, right? 1 lakh rupees per month. On the other hand, let's say the salary of person B is slightly less than A. His salary is only 90,000 rupees per month. But the difference between two is that A, he lives in Mumbai. On the other hand, let's say B, he lives in some other city, let's say Kanpur. right? Now the thing is, in 1 lakh rupee in Mumbai, the amount of goods and services the person A can afford is less as compared to the amount of goods and services person B can afford in Kanpur. Or you take it like this, that the cost of living in Mumbai is much higher than the cost of living in Kanpur, which makes the purchasing power of B higher than purchasing power of A, even though B earns less than A, right? To take an example, let's say the accommodation cost in Mumbai, to get a 2 BHK in Mumbai, a decent 2 BHK in Mumbai, person A might have to spend rupees 30,000 per month. A similar kind of flat person B might get in Kanpur in only 15,000 rupees per month. So you see, the cost of living in Mumbai is much higher than the cost of living in Kanpur, which makes B richer in terms of purchasing power than A, even though again salary of A is more than salary of B. That is what purchasing power parity means, right? And hence similar concept is used between two countries as well, right? So if you are earning same amount of money, let's say in USA and in India, the purchasing power of the person earning that amount of money in India will be much higher than a person in USA, right? So in terms of purchasing power parity, since 2009 itself, India is at 3rd place. If you know, in terms of purchasing power parity, the highest GDP is of China and not of USA. So China is at 1st place, USA is at 2nd place, and India is at 3rd place. So I hope you have understood what does purchasing power parity means. Now the next problem or next issue to be discussed here is, so India, as we have seen, even though we have become the 4th largest economy of the world, but because the per capita income in India is very less, an average Indian is considered to be a poor person only. Another reason why in India there is huge incidence of poverty is high income inequality. What does it mean? That there is one report called as Oxfam report, which tells us about the level of inequality in the economy. The Oxfam report says that the top 1% Indians, right? So in terms of income, the top 1% of the Indians, right, they have control over 40% of the wealth of India, right? So 40% of the wealth of India lies with only 1% Indians. On the other hand, if you see the bottom 50% of the Indians, they have control over only 3% of the total wealth. What does it mean? There is high inequality in India, because of which a large population in India is poor. So even though we have become, in terms of overall GDP, we have become very rich, we have reached to the 4th place, but an average Indian is very poor. Reason being, per capita income is very less because population is very high. Secondly, even among that population also, inequality is very high. To measure inequality in any economy, in economics we have a concept of Lorenz curve. What does Lorenz curve is? So let's say the total wealth of the economy, we keep it on y axis, and the total population of the economy we keep on x axis. Then ideally, in an ideal economy, in an ideal society, the wealth, the 100% wealth should be distributed equally among the citizens, and hence the ideal curve should be like this. But in reality, in all the economy, the wealth is distributed somehow like this, meaning let us say these are 5% of Indians or population, the amount of wealth which these 5% are owning is, let us say, only 1%, not 5%, right. I hope it is clear that the real distribution of wealth in an economy is somewhat like this and not like this, y equal to x line, and hence the difference between the real curve and y equal to x line, this difference, this area, if you divide this area upon this total area, you get a coefficient which is called as Gini coefficient. Higher the value of Gini coefficient, higher the value of Gini coefficient represents that there is higher inequality, or Gini coefficient should be less, right? If Gini coefficient is less, meaning this actual curve is nearer to the y equal to x line, and hence there is less amount of inequality, less level of inequality in the economy. What I am trying to say is the value of Gini coefficient, it is slowly increasing in our economy, meaning inequality is slowly increasing in our economy. So these are the primary reasons why, even though India has become a big economy in terms of nominal GDP, which is at 4th place, but even then an average Indian, or there is high incidence of poverty in India. So I hope you have understood the drawbacks or limitations of GDP. Firstly, it does not account the inequality in the economy. It also does not account those work for which there is not any monetary transaction. There is no monetary transaction. For example, the work which is done by homemakers or mothers at home, that work is not accounted in the GDP. Reason being, for that work there is no monetary transaction. It is very difficult to give a value to that work, a monetary value to that work, and hence GDP also, it is considered as that it is this tool has some limitations, and hence there are some other or better indicators as well to measure the well-being of citizens. So GDP, it tells you, it gives you a rough estimate of the standard of living in any society, in any economy, but there are some other tools as well which are sometimes considered even better than GDP to measure the well-being of citizens. One such tool is, for example, Human Development Index, right? Human Development Index, which is released by UNDP. It considers more than one parameter to give ranking to various countries. It includes parameters like per capita income, like the health indicators or education indicators in that particular society. Then we also have Gender Inequality Index, which is released by World Economic Forum. Purpose is that even though the total GDP of a country might be high, but what is there is discrimination among the members in terms of gender, right? That is calculated or measured by Gender Inequality Index. Then we have Corruption Perception Index. So there are societies where again the overall wealth might be very high, but there might be huge level of corruption, right? So I am saying there are many other indicators or parameters to measure the well-being of citizens. GDP is only one of them, and it is not a comprehensive one. So I hope through this video you have understood that merely becoming 4th biggest economy of the world does not mean India will suddenly become a developed country, or the standard of living in India are going to improve drastically. We have to achieve, or we have to go a lot further in order to fight against problems like poverty, unemployment in our country, right? So I hope the concept of GDP, the concept of per capita income, purchasing power parity, these things are clear to you. Thank you so much for watching this video.